By putting drop bars on a mountain bike, you can have the best of both worlds, great suspension and road-like aerodynamics. This is a terrible idea. Seriously, with very few caveats, I think it makes zero sense to put drop bars on a mountain bike. Recently, I've ridden 2 iterations of such things, a Lee Coogan Innova Super Gravel with a 100mm Fox fork and a 30mm soft tail situation, and a titanium Sage Droptomator with a RockShox Sid Ultimate with flight attendant. I'm a big believer in testing out theories when you can. I was skeptical of this configuration, and while I have tested all the 40 and 50mm gravel suspension forks out there, RockShox Cane Creek, Lefty, the new DT Swiss fork, I'd never ridden a full-on cross-country bike with drop bars before. So I took these 2 out on dirt roads, trails, up mountains, down mountains, riding solo, riding in groups. I did a lot of my normal gravel riding around here in Boulder, Colorado, plus some of the stuff that I don't like riding on a gravel bike because they're mountain bike trails. Some local single track and a nasty stretch of Jeep road called Switzerland Trail. Now, big picture, for those of you new to this channel, welcome. I am very much a believer in whatever you want to ride, have at it. This is a recreational exercise activity. If you want to ride a fixed gear, you want to ride a fat bike, whatever floats your boat, have at it. That said, there are 3 things I want to share here in this video. Thing 1, this type of configuration is absolutely not for me, and I'm pretty sure it is absolutely not for 99% of you. I want to tell you why. Thing 2, I want to tell you about some folks that this configuration works for and why. And thing 3, what I learned and what I'm actually kind of excited about, some weird potential Frankenbike mutations out of these Frankenbike mutations. We'll get into all 3 of those things. You ready? Buckle up, let's go. So thing 1, this is not for me. Gravel sits between road and mountain bike. We know this. We haven't decided exactly where those lines are, right? The tires are drifting towards mountain bike. The addition of suspension is drifting towards mountain bike. Like many things in cycling, I think we find where good is by going a little too far and then bringing it back a bit. Like for a while, everything was aero and deep and stiff, and it went a little too far and we brought it back. And then on the roadside, it was all about the super lightweight. And now we've seen, like in the Tour de France, that maybe lightness isn't everything and that aerodynamics is a thing. Gravel, like I said, is neither road nor mountain. It has a little bit of both. Where you live and how you ride determines what good is for you. For me, I love riding paved roads. I love riding dirt roads. And I don't really like riding chunky stuff. If I'm on a chunky trail, I want to be on a mountain bike. And frankly, even then, I want to be on a smoother trail. So that's just my bias and orientation, so you know where I'm coming from. One distinct feeling I had when riding the Lee Coogan bike on a local single track trail was that this is a beautiful place and I really would rather just be hiking here. Also, if I'm going to be going over big rocks, I want leverage and I want control. I've never thought the rougher the trail got, the tighter and narrower and less control it would be good to have. On the other end of the spectrum, riding these bikes on smooth dirt roads and paved roads feels like overkill. You know, heavy tires, heavy overall weight, and big suspension you don't necessarily need on tamer stuff. To be clear, neither of these bikes are full-on, full suspension cross-country frames. The Lee Coogan has a 30mm rear soft tail design that, to my taste, just feels mushy when pedaling, but doesn't add a whole lot of compliance when riding over bumps. Like looking down and seeing a big fork, I'm thinking, oh, I can just pedal over bumpy stuff, and the fork does its job up front, but I'd still get bucked around a bit on the rear, and then pedaling on smoother stuff, I'd just look down and see the rear end kind of bobbing up and down. So not a fan of that design at all. The Sage titanium bike, made by Dave Rosen up in Oregon, felt a lot better to pedal. You know, it's a hardtail, had a reverb dropper post on there. But even the dropper post, for me, I'm like, well, if I'm riding the type of terrain that requires me to drop the post to roll over super steep stuff or cut my way through tight turns, why am I on narrow bars? I mean, yes, gravel for many people is about connecting different things. Riding some pavement, riding some dirt road, riding that little sneaky single track to get between the sections. But again, for me, like, I don't like underbiking. I don't like riding chunky stuff. So the bikes feel like overkill. Also, even if you do like to ride the chunky stuff, why not triangulate and ride a proper mountain bike for that space? Just saw a post on Bike Radar, something along the lines of, the best gravel bike for me is a cross-country bike. And the rider determined that he could do his local loop faster on a cross-country bike than he could on a gravel bike, which makes sense. If your gravel loop is a solo ride where you're on rough stuff and maybe trail, and you're not riding in a group, then again, back to my original thing, whatever bike works for you, have at it. For me, and for a lot of folks, gravel, it's a social thing, and it's a group dynamics thing, and that's part of what the drop bar is for, right? It's faster to reduce your CDA, aerodynamics is a thing, and it's also easier to ride in a bunch when your arms are in like this and not out like that. So if your local gravel loop, you're riding by yourself on trails, then yeah, ride a mountain bike. They're great things. Drop bars make sense for pack ergonomics, if you would, and higher speeds. If you need cross-country suspension travel, I'd argue you also need cross-country leverage, where neither aerodynamics nor pack ergonomics are things. So for me, bottom line, riding these bikes to get to the chunkier stuff felt subpar. It was heavier and sluggish. And then once I got to the mountain bikey stuff, the riding there was also subpar because I was riding like this instead of like this. Thing two, folks for whom this makes sense. I'll give you three categories. Elite athletes doing weird things, niche interest folks doing weird things, and then tinkerers. Start with the elite athletes. When I was in Colombia doing Transcordilleras, a gentleman by the name of Lawrence Tindam had just won the nonstop, where he completed 1,000 super rugged kilometers in 3 days, sleeping a total of 7 hours. For this, Lauren was on a Specialized Xworks Epic with drop bars and some stubby aero bars, because Lawrence was A, hauling ass, B, riding on rough roads, and C, riding by himself. If you are doing this type of thing, sure, have at it. Similarly, last year, Keegan Swinson won Leadville Mountain Bike 100, riding a cross-country frame with, you guessed it, drop bars. And like Lawrence, he was A, hauling ass, B, riding rough terrain, and C, riding by himself, where the speeds were such that aerodynamics matters. Keegan may again this weekend at Leadville ride a similar setup. He'd be the first to tell you that going from this bar to this bar compromises handling. Keegan is an elite athlete with excellent handling, and he'll tell you that the Leadville course is not the most technical. I think he would also tell you that this is not the move for most people. You know, even at a race like Leadville, there's three basic scenarios. You're climbing, where the aerodynamics isn't much of a thing. You're descending, where yes, you're going quickly, that aerodynamics can be measured, but it's your handling, not the frontal drag, that is the limiter there. And then third, when you're on the flats, unless you are solo going for the win, you should be racing in a pack, where aerodynamics is defined by pack dynamics, not the shape of your handlebar. So even at Leadville, even for elite athletes, I think for most of them, it doesn't make sense to ride that Keegan Swinson setup. Again, refer to my statement at the beginning, you do you. If you're a pro athlete, you're an amateur athlete, you like the hand position better, knock yourself out. But you are compromising handling 100%. And unless you've got great skills, I think there is more time to be made up by handling than there is on aero on such a course. This brings up a bit of an aside about marketing claims you probably have heard or read about a frame or a bike or a helmet, as far as how many seconds or minutes or watts you've saved. These are based on a few things. One, the duration of the whole course, and two, critically, the supposition that you are in the wind by yourself the entire time, which unless you're Keegan or Lawrence and you're going for a win, you shouldn't be in the wind by yourself the whole time. You should be sitting in a pack, where the gains are much smaller. So just consider the whole picture. That's what I'm saying. Of course, me talking about Keegan riding drop bars at Leadville will have folks in the comments saying, well, Dylan Johnson did it first. And yes, Dylan did ride drop bars at Leadville before Keegan. And way before either of these two dudes were doing this, a gent by the name of John Tomac was rocking this setup with great success back in the 90s. And before Tomac did it, a woman by the name of Jacquie Phelan was getting after it with this configuration in the 80s. I'll put a link to a good story on the mountain bike Hall of Famer, Norba co-founder, Wombats founder, and just all around wonderful person, Jacquie Phelan, in the link below so you can buff up on your history about Jacquie. But yes, nothing is new under the sun, although there are some new things here with this technology on the flight attendant fork. But first, two other types of folks in this category for whom this might make sense. Niche folks doing weird things, like if you're into bike packing on rowdy courses, sure, have at it. And if you just like tinkering with bikes in different configurations, again, the world is your oyster. Do what you will. For that crew, I would absolutely recommend the Sage over the Lee Coogan, in that Dave built this bike up for the reach to make sense for the drop bar instead of just taking a mountain bike frame and slapping a bar on there where your position has changed. You know, just having some rhyme or reason to what you're doing and why is probably a good idea with this bike setup. And thing number 3, what I learned and what I'm excited about. This was my first time riding the flight attendant electronics on this RockShox SID forks. It's pretty freaking awesome. There are 3 different settings. There's open, there's pedal, and there's locked. And the fork works in conjunction with the other access parts, the power meter, and if you have a full suspension bike, the rear suspension, to not just read the vibration coming up, but also to read how much power you're putting into the system. And it toggles the suspension between those 3 accordingly and very quickly. Further, you can configure some of the buttons. Like on this, I configured the left bonus button to have a control on the flight attendant, so I could lock it out or unlock it. That's cool. But what's even cooler is that I seldom use that because the system works so well on its own. Of the many gravel suspension bikes I've ridden, there's always a compromise, right? Weight versus functionality is one of the many compromises. The DT Swiss fork, for instance, has a lockout, which is great, and I used a lot when I was at the Traca in Spain earlier this year, but that is a big manual thumb lever on the handlebar. DT Swiss folks argue that they went with the simplicity and the relative lighter weight of that versus having it integrated into either a mechanical Shimano shifter or using an electronic situation. That said, I really like the electronic situation. And yes, you have to remember to charge the batteries. That's just one more battery on a bike that's already covered in batteries. But the functionality is pretty slick. And at no point on a gravel ride have I thought, you know what would be great right now as I'm coming into a really rough chundery sections, if I could reach down and try to figure out where the lockout is on the, the top of the fork leg and mess with that and try not to go over the bars. Just today riding on Switzerland Trail, I went to turn on my little DJI camera on the underside of my computer mount and managed to ride myself off the trail. So it's good to keep your hands where your hands should be when stuff is rough. And whether you're messing with the camera or messing with suspension, if you can keep both hands on your hoods, that's a positive thing. So bottom line, this system's cool. Yes, it's heavy and expensive, and the amount of travel I think is unnecessary for gravel, but if you could take some of this functionality, trim it down a bit for the 40 to 50 mil, that distance that makes sense, I think, in some situations for gravel, I think that could be a pretty sweet package. So that was a pleasant surprise. Another thing that was surprising that shouldn't be was that, hey, guess what? Suspension over rough stuff is faster. Today I rode Switzerland Trail and then went down a very steep road and then back up a very steep road called Lick Skillet. A couple friends are in from Louisiana getting ready for Leadville, so they want to do that. So I'm like, okay, we'll ride it, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to complain the whole way down and back up. Going down, Strava told me it went faster than ever. In part, I think, because I seldom ride down that. But I was going what to me felt like very, very cautiously. Both the pain in my arm and a bit of the PTSD has me going slowly downhill these days. Bo came screaming past just as an illustration of the speed I was going, and it was still my fastest time down that compared to riding down on a normal gravel bike when I felt like I was going faster than I was today. So, newsflash, suspension works. Bottom line, I'm glad that gravel is still weird, still mutating, still evolving, and that people and brands are trying new things. As for a drop bar mountain bike, not for me. And I'd venture to guess it's not for you, but I want to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think. And whether you like to ride an electric fat bike or a fixie aero bike or a 45-year-old drop bar mountain bike like Jacquie Phelan still does, just get out there and enjoy the ride.
Puppy dog. He's like, let me show y'all how to do this. Yeah. I see your two wheels. I raise you 4 legs. Bring it.